what's his like? So I've been looking for people to make martial arts suits. But every suit I've seen looks kind of like Furry, or it's like fucked up. You have like a social or something.
It's like wolf. Check me out, my Pokemon trainer fit.
Alright, it's 11. So, I made some mention earlier that we got an hour and a half in this room. I have about like 45 minutes of material. So there'll be plenty of time to just like chill, ask some questions, mingle amongst yourselves, stuff like that towards the end. Want to make sure you set some time for that, and also we have to get out of here 10 minutes early, even though it says 12:30. It's more like we got to get out of here at 12:20. But yeah, we got plenty of time. So with a show of hands, who's already a fan of a visual novel project? Any visual novel? All right, a lot of you. Who's here, like, not knowing really what a visual novel is and is like, yeah?
Really?
Yeah? Right?
Really?
All right, so most of you are aware of what we got going on in this art form that we've created. I'm excited to share it with you all. Also, another quick disclaimer. This is not an 18+ panel, but I will be discussing 18+ visual novel projects. Viewer discretion is advised, right? So please read things that are appropriate for you, for either your age or your sensibilities or whatever. When it comes to visual novels, most authors will have like a page about what their project is about with trigger warnings or anything like that, if that's something that you need. All right, so let's kick this thing off. So I built this presentation in Game Engine because why not? I'm just gonna leave this up here for a minute. So here's the title, a couple QR codes if you want to scan them. On the left there, that is the recommended reads. I'm gonna be talking about every visual novel I'm gonna be talking about in this presentation is gonna be in a playlist, which you can find on itch.io. Also, I'll have these QR codes up later if you're not able to nab it. And then the other one is going to be the Anthrocon Furry VN Telegram chat. And anyone can go in and join that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
I wish I could make it bigger. I don't know. Also, now it's time to mute that chat for like an hour so it doesn't blow up. All right, so for those of you who are new to this whole visual novel thing, let's talk about what a visual novel is. So, I put a little definition up here. There's plenty of definitions, and truth be told, the more granular and specific you get, the harder it is to define. So it is a kind of a tricky medium. A visual novel is a form of digital interactive storytelling where the narrative progresses incrementally. That's my definition. There's some other ones out there, but that's the one that I have. So visual novel typically is composed of 3 parts-ish, depending on the novel. There's lots of flexibility with it. Key elements being background, sprite, and a text box. So the sprite is going to be a character that's on the screen. The background, of course, is just the backdrop, and then text box or GUI, graphics user interface is going to be up on there too. The sprites are dynamic objects. They can change expression, they can move around and such. Look at him go. Look at him go. Also forgot, I turned down the voice volume earlier. Spoiler alert. Oh, he didn't say it. Oh. Audio AV fails me again. That was supposed to be a voice line. Anyways, the sprites can talk too. They have text boxes. You can also add voice acting to it if you want. You don't have to add voice acting. I just choose to do that for my projects. And then visual novels often have what you call CGs. This is kind of a dated term. It means like computer graphics, but I think a more updated term would be like character graphics or composed image, where it is not a sprite, it's just a flat image, fully rendered. Just the piece is supposed to be as it is. Visual novels also introduce choice mechanics. So, all right, let's see what happens. Oh, dang it. Oh, good, all right. So visual novels started over in Japan around the 80s. These are some really popular titles that come from the area. And I personally am not too familiar with it. I like Western furry visual novels, that's like my jam. But these are some of the more popular titles I've been able to pull up. Maybe you've recognized some of these. Probably most of you recognize Ace Attorney at the very least. So, yeah. What? I was afraid someone was gonna be like, no, that's not a visual novel. But yeah, so these are some really popular ones. It worked its way west, as many cool things in Japan do. They work their way over to the United States, and eventually us dirty Americans got our grubby little hands on the medium. And the grubbier hands of the furry community got a hold of it as well. So in 2020, a little thing came out called Ad Astra, and personally changed my life. For a lot of other people, I'm sure it might have changed your life here. Raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by Ad Astra. All right, yeah, it's way too many hands, way too many. You have a question?
How do you pronounce that title? Everyone has a different way of saying that.
I say Ad Astra.
Like
Just Ad Astra.
Don't you mean Ad Astra?
Whatever.
Astra.
Pronounce it however you want. I don't know if Hallie cares. Hallie's the author.
It's also one word here instead of two, like
Yeah.
that. So.
Yeah, you got really creative.
Yeah, but it means to the stars.
Getting rid of that space, man. Anyway, so Ad Astra dropped in 2020, and it sparked what I call kind of the boom in furry visual novels. Because, you know, of course in 2020 there was that thing that happened, the paniness or whatever. And after that happened, a lot of us were inside. We felt very sad. We wanted to read things that made us even more sad for some reason. So,
Misery loves company.
yeah, exactly. So when Ad Astra kicked off, that sparked a lot of other visual novel projects to follow. Some like Remember the Flowers, I don't know, something called Chord Progressions, and something some guy made.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. All right, so why are furry VNs super valuable to the furry community? I gave you some bullet points here. So one thing I really like about it is that it gives creatives in our space more opportunity to share their work. So for a while, I think we all kind of know the joke that like illustrators get the most attention while musicians and writers kind of take a back seat. One thing I really like about visual novels is that it's really elevating everybody to the same level. So illustrators, writers, and musicians are all coming together to create these projects, and they all get to share in that added benefit of having one project to all their names. There's little to no limit on what we can do on these things. We can do our stories however we want, when we publish them, so long as everything's like legal, that's pretty much it. We can put them on itch.io or any other platform. It's an exciting form of indie art. One thing that's good about indie art is that we're not beholden to like shareholders or metrics and such. We can just do things the way that we want to, and we don't have to worry too much about the money side of things, sort of the publisher side of things, the publicity, all that stuff. Top of that, introducing all kinds of people to the furry community. I have met so many people who were not furries, then they read Ad Astra or extracurricular activities or Mornatsu or something, and then they got infected with the bug. Is there anyone like that in here? Anyone who was like not a furry, then read a VN, and then you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm furry now. All right, couple people. It's not as uncommon as you think.
The pathogen.
What was that?
The pathogen.
Mm-hmm. All right, outlet for unfiltered, most authentic expression. So one thing about, that's so cool about our communities, it's an art community, the furry community, and we can make whatever we want, and we can do it how we want, and we can be as weird as we want. And you know, kind of going back to indie art or the indie thing, it's like we're not beholden to any person or company or shareholders to make things the way that we want to make them. Low barrier to entry for creators, it is super easy. Well, maybe not easy, but it is super accessible to get into visual novel making. If you have a computer that was manufactured with a year that begins with a 2, you can make a visual novel because the software is not that complicated. And then on top of that, low barrier to consume. Most of these are free. You can just go download them at your leisure. Yeah, got a question back there?
I actually wanted to point out some tools for anybody who wanted to make.
I'll be talking about software.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. No, you're good. So where can you get visual novels? Well, 2 big places, itch.io and Steam. Steam, you'll have like a lot of the more professional ones, especially if you're looking for a visual novel that might not be furry. That's where most of them go. But in order to publish on Steam, you usually have to pay a fee. I think it's like $100. I've never done it. Because I like itch.io. So itch is an indie game platform. You can pretty much publish whatever you want on there as long as it's legal, pretty much. And one thing that's great about it is it has a lot of built-in like social media type tools where creators can communicate with their community. And I think it's a really awesome platform. If you haven't heard of itch.io before today, I would recommend you go on there. Because even if you don't go on there to read visual novels, you can go on there to see a ton of really cool indie games. All right, so we're gonna move into the part of the presentation where I recommend some titles to you, some disclaimers. I'm gonna be discussing things or titles that are for 18+ audiences. Again, if that's not what you're interested in, totally fine. I'm just giving you a warning. And again, I'm not gonna show you any 18+ artwork. So yeah, reader discretion is advised. And on top of that, like I said earlier, all creators, they give you a little description of what their game's about. If there's any kind of trigger warnings or anything like that that you need, most of the time it's gonna be there, especially if the project is a little more professional, a little more popular. So this is Bowser's rating scale. This is not anything close to the ESRB or anything like that. So when I show these novels to you, I'm gonna be presenting some graphics like this. So if it's 13+, that means that the author themselves have said that the visual novel is safe for work or appropriate for people under 18. If it's 18 and it's yellow, that means it's kind of like rated R, rated M. There might be some violence and blood and stuff like that, but there's not gonna be any erotic content. It's 18+ with 1 chili pepper. It means it's gonna have some nudity or erotic content in there. And if it's 18+ with 2 chili peppers, it means it's gonna have gratuitous erotic content. So extra spicy, yes. And then another piece of rating I'll give is, or indicate whether it's complete or ongoing. So a lot of visual novels are kind of structured like TV shows, where you get episodes every couple of months or so. And that's how they're meant to be consumed. They're designed to be consumed that way. Other ones are completed titles. It's like a movie. You can watch it from start to finish. All right, so let's talk about the GOATs. These are the best ones. The one left there, Echo. One of the first ones that really kind of kicked things off, one of the more popular ones. I'm even seeing some Echo-ish cosplays in here. So it is a horror title written by Howley, produced by Echo Project, which is the most prolific development company in the furry visual novel space right now. It is complete. It has some 18+ artwork, as you can tell by the chili pepper. And then I also talked about Ad Astra. So just to kind of give a brief overview of what these are, Echo is like, my buddy Keith describes it as a anti-dating sim, where it's like, there's a cast of love interests and you pick one and then you hate them instead of love them. I personally have not read Echo, it scares me. It is a scary story. It's got lots of horror elements. You got a question?
I've heard also described as Higurashi, but for gay furries.
Perhaps. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
All right, and then Ad Astra. Like I described earlier, it's a romance mixed with some horror elements, mixed with some political intrigue, intergalactic space boyfriend nonsense, good stuff. This is the one that most people cite as being like either their first one or their favorite one. Yeah, so if you're into horror, Echo is like it. If you're into romance, Ad Astra is also kind of just it. All right, so I'm gonna go through some genres. So we're gonna start with action and adventure, and pretty much every genre I'm just gonna give you 2, because I could give you 100 and we could be here all day long, but I don't have that kind of time, and you don't have that kind of time either. So, Undefeated, made by my good friend Leo, just completed it like a couple months ago. Congrats to him. 18 plus is about a underground, well, not underground. I mean, it's literally underground. It's physically underground, but it is like a MMA fighting league story. Lots of good social commentary, lots of good intrigue, and it has lots of action sequences. If you're into that, if you're into reading, you know, big dudes punching each other in vivid detail, he does a good job there. And there's Glory Hounds. This is another one made by Echo Project. We're gonna be talking about them a lot. Ongoing one, 18 plus with some peppers going on. One thing that's really cool about Glory Hounds is its art style. It's got a comic book style art direction, and the CGs, or those composed images, are comic panels that you kind of pan through as the game progresses. I think it's really, really cool. And just really well put together. Red did a fabulous job writing it, and the whole team did a good job putting that together. All right, horror. On the left there, Arches. This one just got completed not too long ago. I believe there's going to be some side stories that are going to be published for it soon. But this is one that is a sequel to Echo, also written by Howley. One thing that's cool about this one is that it really leans more into the horror elements. So if you liked Echo and you're like, man, I wish it was scarier, boom, Arches.
Yeah.
And then next one, Password. Just got completed not too long ago. One thing that's cool about Password is that it has a really unique branching narrative structure. So like I kind of mentioned before, like with visual novels, you can have choices that can lead to branching narratives. And Password's got a massive branching narrative going on for it. It's like encouraged that you go through, you can kind of like scroll back, scroll forward, all that good stuff. All right, sci-fi.
Yay.
Yay. On the left is what I believe to be the most underrated visual novel. It's called Hearts Faster Than Light. It's made by my wonderful friend Arcadia. It's ongoing, it's almost done. One thing that's really cool about Hearts Faster Than Light is that each image is composed for that scene. It's not a sprite and background structure. Every single piece of art is its own composition. So it reads more like a comic book. There's also animations, and Arcadia does a really good job with the art style as well. So this is like a hard recommend for me if you like sci-fi stuff. They also describe it as a queer kinetic, or a queer furry space opera kinetic novel. That's their tagline. And then on the right, my buddy Sedge is making No More Future. What I love about this one is the art style in it is really, really cool. It's really unique. And then on top of that, there's a lot of like long dialogue sessions where characters kind of go back and forth. There's a lot of philosophy stuff going on, some Socratic dialogue. So if like that's your thing, you want to sit down, eat a bowl of popcorn while you watch people Socratically go at it. This is a nice one. It's a good one. Romance. There's a lot of romance. I picked out a couple. This is also where I mentioned that like I kind of wanted to get a good spread of things that are complete, incomplete, good for 13 plus, good for 18 plus, stuff like that. I just wanted to get a good variety in there. So on the left there, my good buddy Joe's making Under the Bridge. One thing that's cool about Under the Bridge is that most visual novels are made in RenPy, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit later. He chose to do it in Unity. He built his own framework. And on top of it being like a visual novel, it also has like an open world exploration element. There are mini games. So it is definitely more on the gamey side of a visual novel. And then there's Where the Demon Lurks, authored by my friend Libra. One thing I really like about Where the Demon Lurks is that it is really polished. It's got lots of really great visuals. It kind of sucks as me as a developer, because when I see that, I'm like, oh my God, is that gonna be the standard? Like, am I gonna have to do all that? So, but it is so good though. I love the art style. And again, it's just got a level of polish that's really cool. It's got a really fun story. And it's very funny. It's more of a comedy than a romance. There are some romance elements, so I thought I would add it in here, but I definitely wanted to shout out Where the Demon Lurks. post-apocalyptic. If you get that joke, you're a real one. So, Soul Creek on the left, made by my good buddy Ryu. Ongoing, lots of peppers going on. One thing about Soul Creek, it's a romance. Also kind of post-apocalyptic sci-fi type stuff going on there. It has one of the strongest plots I've seen in a visual novel. I don't want to spoil too much, but just really good stuff, really good art direction. I'm a big fan. This one is just kind of like, it's a good one to get into if you don't mind that it's not complete and you just want to read something that's just going to kind of grip you really quickly. And then Remember the Flowers fits a lot of that description as well. Another ongoing one made by Jericho. It's another one that's got a really good amount of polish to it. On top of it, just tons of characters, really strong plot. Right now, with how Remember the Flowers is progressing, it's kind of like there's multiple books or stories kind of jammed into one. So it's just tons to read through. It's going to take you a couple of days to get through what's already there. Fantasy. So on the left there, AtMac made Liar. Just completed not too long ago, I think a couple months ago. One thing that's fun about Liar is that it's going to be like a 3-volume kind of situation. So Liar's the first part, and then there's going to be 2 other visual novels that are going to be following it. One thing I really like about Liar, good art style. It is also a lot of focus on romance. I think that's really nice. Good strong plot, lots of excellent stuff going for it. Then Killigan's Treasure, it's an ongoing one, authored by Eddie Yo. One thing I really like about Killigan's Treasure is that it is kind of like with Under the Bridge, it's a very gamey visual novel. There's RPG elements, so you can like dress up the character, you can, there's some combat. It's not like the most advanced crazy thing, but I like that because it doesn't distract from the story. So it's got a good balance in my opinion. And these are my projects. So on the right there, that's Before You Depart. I made that with some guy and 3 other wonderful people. We did it for a game jam. If you don't know what that is, it's a competition, or it doesn't have to be a competition, but it's basically where a bunch of developers get together and they create something. Usually a game, usually something, or maybe a framework or something like that. You have like a limited amount of time to do it. And this is one that we did for the 2023 May Wolf Game Jam, where a few entries got entered. This year's May Wolf just ended, and it added like 20 visual novels to our space. So if you're like coming in here, you're like well versed in the FEN community already, and you haven't checked that out, I would recommend it. And then my main squeeze is on the left, has chord progressions. It is an ongoing one. I install it episode by episode, like I say. Very spicy. It's a dating sim with some musical themes going on in there. I try to add some musical language to the writing as well. But yeah, so that's my stuff. All right, so that concludes the first part of this panel where I introduced to you what furry visual novels are. If that's all you're interested in and you don't want to know how to make them, you're welcome to just come and go at your leisure. I don't care. It's not my con, it's your con. So what we're going to do later, though, is that over in the Weston, Pennsylvania room, I am hosting a meetup for FEN fans and creators. Everyone is welcome to come there. I'll be having some stickers from Chord Progressions and some business cards and such. I wanted to bring them with me now, but I forgot, but I will bring them there. And again, it's going to be today, starting at 4. All right, so we're at the halfway point. So just going to chill for a minute. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll chat with you. Yeah, what you got?
Where are the visual novels usually posted? Are they usually on Steam or is it like?
Usually on itch.io. So if you want to scan one of these QR codes, the one on the left will take you to itch.io. I have a collection there where all the visual novels I just talked about are all there. And then the one on the right is going to be for the group chat that we have going on for Furry VN fans that are here at Anthrocon. By the way, y'all standing in the back, if you want a seat, there's some seats. You don't have to stand. I have to stand, you don't. What's up?
In regards to creating visual novels, is that something you can go at alone, or is it something recommended as a team? Because I'm trying to write one, I have a script, and I can configure the program, but I know where it's.
I would definitely recommend a team, and we'll talk about that later. I'll go into more detail about that. Also, I'm gonna take a water break.
Two-parter. What's the what do you say is the best for a visual novel to start with if you're completely new, and what's the worst?
I will decline to answer the second one.
Okay.
Because when it comes to the worst, that is very subjective because people have very different tastes. There are some ones that are maybe shoddily put together, but some people absolutely adore it because they just like that. The best one to get into, honestly, it kind of depends on what you're into. Like all the ones that I talked about earlier, like just these genres. If you just happen to really like action adventure, like go for Glory Hounds. If you want something completed, maybe I would go for like maybe Liar. You know, kind of depends on what your preference is really, because I mean, there's so many out there at this point that you could just take your pick. But I'm trying to think of what my. Honestly, I would kind of say Ad Astra. If I had to give like a definitive answer, I'd say Ad Astra. If you're okay with the Chili Peppers and you're okay with being emotionally devastated for a while, yeah. All right, what you got?
Two questions actually. The first is that one thing I kind of want to do if I make a visual novel is to have some basic sprite animation, especially for like lip syncing some of the text in the text box. Is that something that's possible in Anthrocon? You guys are going to Google making it?
Depends on how much you want to lip sync it. Yeah, we can touch on that later.
All right, and the other one was that how do you typically do like the larger visual novels in like the Anthrocon project? Do they only make money through like merch or other things, or because I know they're pretty flat.
Usually Patreon.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. All right, what's up?
Did you do everything for your own visual novel, or do you have some people working on you? What position were you?
I write and I code. Well, I have my finger in every pie. I like edit some of the sprites myself and using photo editing software. But yeah, it's like as a project lead, you generally want to take on as many things as you want. All right, if you have a question about development, let's save that until later. But if you have a question about anything I just presented, okay, sure, go ahead.
This might be a little bit leading into development, but like it's also regarding your rating system. I know writing can be a very nebulous process. So like, how do you tell if one of these is truly complete?
Usually they'll say it. Like if you mean like truly complete, like as in like there's a it has an ending made. It'll usually say it on the itch page if it's complete. It might not.
Is there anything that isn't up there that's currently in development that you're excited for?
There's so many. That's the problem. Is like I had to pick 14 out of like literally hundreds, and so many of them are made by my wonderful, wonderful friends. If I had to recommend just a random one, this guy, I've identified him as the Chapel Roan of Furry VN developers. He's your favorite VN developers, favorite Furry VN developer. Competocat recently came out with a title called, it's really long, it's like, I'm in love with a school bullies or school delinquents lover and I want out. It's very silly, it's pretty short. But I read that and I fell head over heels for it. I love Competocats. All right, let's jump into the second part. So, and also I need some water. Now we're gonna be talking about development. We're gonna get a little more deep into the rabbit hole. So let's start it with kind of how I'm framing this. I'm framing this as if you want to be the project manager for a Furry VN project. So the thing is that you can bring anything to the table, but you should have some role in the creative process. You can't just be like a venture capitalist coming in with just a bunch of money. Like you gotta contribute. So that might be writing, that might be coding, writing, art, music, etc. But basically, I'm going to be framing this like you want to make your own. You want to start the project. You want to manage the project. If because sometimes maybe you're just an artist, you're like, yeah, I want to draw for one, but like I don't want to make it. That's totally cool. That's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. That's just not how I'm framing this. And you don't have to do everything.
What if I want to?
Well, you can certainly try. I don't envy you, friend. All right, so I am very corporate pilled. So I'm giving you a pillars of success model. All right? This is just a way to kind of frame it. So how I frame the success of the visual novel is that it's structured in a few parts. You have your foundation down there, which is like your scope of the project. You have 5 pillars supporting it. The pillars I've identified are your team, your assets, your script, software, marketing, and then that holds up the structure. So we're gonna go through that bit by bit. Starting with the foundation. So the foundation is your scope of work. What do you want to do? At a very conceptual level. So you gotta be asking yourself some questions like, how long do I want the story to be? Do you want a big epic 100,000 word or longer than that, maybe 1,000,000 word, multiple routes kind of situation? Or do you want to start with a short story? Maybe like 20, 30,000 words-ish, maybe like 3 sprites or something, a couple of backgrounds. Up to you, totally up to you, because there is no rigid roadmap. You can do what you want with visual novels, which is really cool, but it's also a little daunting. All right, so what talents are you bringing to the table? So you gotta identify, because like I said, if you're gonna be a project manager, you gotta contribute creatively. So what are you gonna do? Are you gonna write? Are you gonna make art, music, graphic design, sound design? Or are you just gonna be really good at project management? You gotta find what you're good at, and you gotta really leverage that. How do I keep myself motivated? That's really important. The #1 killer of furry visual novels is when motivation goes in the tank. You gotta figure out how to keep yourself motivated. And the thing is that how you keep yourself motivated is up to you. There's no correct answer as to how to do that. And it might be, you have to keep a rigid schedule, or maybe you don't keep a rigid schedule. Maybe that would make you lose motivation. You just gotta figure that out. How you're gonna fund your project. So I mentioned earlier, Patreon is the most popular way. The typical business model for a furry visual novel is that you post it for free on itch.io, and then you open up a Patreon page where you can have donators give you some money every month or so. You give them early access content, behind the scenes stuff or whatever. And that's usually how it goes. You can also do a Kickstarter model where you want to try to get the money up front, or maybe you just fund it out of pocket because you're that suspiciously wealthy furry that everyone talks about. I haven't seen too many of them, but apparently they're real. All right, you also gotta ask yourself, do you want this to be a one-shot, or do you want this to be an episodic series? Are you gonna wanna make installments, builds, build upon what you already have? And then how much time and effort are you willing to invest? Keyword there is willing, right? So for me personally, developing chord progressions is my 3rd job. So I'm able to handle that fine, but maybe you can't. So maybe you gotta invest like 10 hours a week into it, 20 hours a week. And you can certainly do a visual novel project regardless of what schedule you wanna have, but you gotta figure out what that schedule is gonna be. All right, so we're gonna start with that first pillar, team. You need a team. You need at least someone to read your script. Like, doing a completely solo project is not advisable. You're gonna need at least someone to edit and make sure that things are good, do some quality checks on the script, on the game itself. At the very, very least, if you're like a multi-talent. But if you're not a multi-talent, like a normal person, what you need to ask yourself is, what's the gap in your talent? What can't you bring to the table? So, for example, for me with chord progressions, I write, I do the coding. Those are skills I brought to the table. I don't do art. I don't draw very good. So what did I do? I hired 3 artists to help me out. 1 artist to do sprites, 1 artist to do backgrounds, 1 artist to do the composed images or the CGs.
How much do you usually pay for those?
What's that?
How much do you usually pay for those sprites?
It's confidential. No. I have spent thousands of dollars on art for chord progressions. I have seen that money back, kind of. I have at least broken even as of last year. Yeah, woo! Because it is a big accomplishment, because most furry VN devs do not break even. So that's your little warning that this might be a money sink for you. If you're thinking, if you got dollar signs in your eyes and you're like, wow, I can make bank on this, you're probably not. You're probably not. Most furry VN developers work 2 jobs, or in my case, 3. All right, so you gotta find the gap in your talent, fill that. One thing about teamwork, very efficient with time-wise. The bigger the team you have, the more you can get done in a shorter amount of time. So for example, like I mentioned, I have an artist for sprites, an artist for backgrounds, an artist for CGs. Each of them are able to work on a project at the same time, which improves my timeline. Now, hypothetically, that means I get out builds earlier, but I don't, because I'm the bottleneck. I'm the bottleneck. But it makes it really nice because it puts a lot of less stress on them. I don't have to ask one artist to do all of those things. So that's just something to think about. But maybe your vision might be different. So for example, if like No More Future, that's a very cohesive art style where one artist works on the backgrounds, the sprites, and everything else. So that's pretty critical for that vision to have one artist. So it depends on what your vision is. Recruit and interview. So that's what I did. I found fan artists who were drawing some Echo stuff and whatnot. And I went to their DMs and I just asked them like, hey, you want to work on a project with me? I got in Discord, I interviewed them, and then they're on my team and they've been working with me for about 2 years. So I'm doing something right. But that's something I would recommend is recruit and interview. As a team leader, don't be a jerk, basically. Respect your team's time, be patient with them. It's a visual novel, not boot camp. You don't really need to rush these things like crazy, give reasonable timelines, be upfront with your expectations from your team. Like when I was interviewing my teammates, I asked them, I'm like, listen, there's gonna be some months I'm not gonna ask anything from you. Other months I might ask you for like 10 things. Is that okay? You know, so long as you set up those expectations and you stick to them, you should be fine. But again, be a good leader. You're gonna be a team leader, be a good leader. All right, any questions about team stuff? Yeah.
I know you mentioned that a lot of this kind of boomed during the pandemic, so I imagine a lot of the collaboration would be online. But since, well, I guess we're still pandemic, but now that there's more in-person, do you meet in person or do you find it still easier to
Do we meet in person, Rocky?
Not for work.
Yeah. So some of my artists, one of my artists lives in the Philippines. I'm never gonna see him. That makes me incredibly sad, but I'm never gonna see him. But yeah, I for the most part, for most visual novel projects, everyone just interfaces on Discord and whatnot. Yeah. So, but that said, if you can, meet your team in person, it's great. It's wonderful. I have a few teammates here.
If there was a different dynamic that you noticed, or if it was pretty much the same?
Like I definitely feel closer to the people who I meet in real life.
Sometimes with the music, I guess it's the only times that we.
Or what?
With the music, it's the only times where we had like actual in-person teammates.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Axel Martini. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Not naming names or anything, but have you ever experienced like interpersonal conflict on a team, and how would you recommend people manage that in case it pops up between you and someone or between other people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I have the good fortune of being very lucky. Good fortune. So my teammates and I, we've been able to kind of vibe really well. So I haven't had too many issues with that, other than the occasional just like, back and forth on creative visions, that kind of thing, where like an artist has a certain vision for something that they think, but I would say best way to avoid conflict, listen to your team, give them flexibility with the schedule, with the art direction and style and things like that. Because there has to be some kind of understanding that if you're working with a team and you commission them for something, whether it's music, art, or whatever, what you have in your brain, you're lucky to get like 50% of that in the material world. So there just has to be some compromise. But if conflict does come up, again, just, I'll sound like a broken record, but like, communication. Communication. All right, in the back.
Oh my god. Sorry.
It's okay.
What I've also found helpful is that so I'm actually working on a project with a friend right now.
Okay.
And the first thing I did was, like, I have my own ideas, he has his own ideas. What I thought might be really helpful, and we're both amateurs here, neither of us are getting paid.
We're all amateurs.
Yeah. But like, neither of us are willing to put any money into the project. What I actually did was, I said, hey, I will help you develop a video game with your characters first, and then we'll see how we work from there.
Right. That's good, yeah.
That helps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, compromise, communication, all that good stuff. That's just general team dynamics 101. You in the back. What's up?
There was a stone over here on my strategy. I really don't want to ruin the floor or anything. I just want to.
Oh, is there a spill?
Yeah.
Okay. There's like an AV team like around the corner. Maybe they might be able to help. All right. I'll take like one more. What's up?
I'm planning on wanting to do a fan game visual novel. Which, with the team, should I like try to find people that are interested in the same game as I? Like the game, the game is based off a character I like from another game. Is it fine to do like a visual novel based off that character, or no?
It depends on the vision. I think it would be ideal if everyone on your team, if you're making a fan project, that everyone on your team is also a fan of what you're taking inspiration from. That's a good idea. Things would be a little more cohesive, and there'll be more understanding when you ask them for certain things. They won't have to like question it.
Okay. That's all. Because I'm planning on something later. Like I'm wanting to do this, but like I've just been a little nervous on where to start too.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna jump into this next part. So if there's more questions, I'll absolutely be happy to talk about them. We got plenty of time. It is, again, we have 40 minutes. Script. So it is a visual novel. That means you gotta write good, or at least cohesively. You don't have to be the best writer. And the thing is that we're all, like I said earlier, we're all amateurs. I still consider myself an amateur writer, even though I've been doing it for 2 years. I don't pretend that my shit don't stink. But the thing is that it's got to be good. It's got to be the thing that you put the most time into. So I don't want to give you like a writing 101 thing. You can go to writing 101 if you want to learn more about how to structure a story and stuff. I just want to tell you some of the things that are different about writing a visual novel than what you would normally see. So one thing you can do is spend less time on descriptive writing. Because the thing is that you have the visuals, you have the background, you have the sprites. You don't have to describe in detail like what they're wearing, what's going on in the background, stuff like that, which is really, really nice, right? So you can spend less time doing that, more time focusing on some other things. One thing I think is a good key, and this is just kind of general advice, if your vision is different from this, you don't have to exactly follow this, but character dialogue and writing seem to work really, really well. Because when it comes to visual novels, you're interfacing with these sprites, and people get very attached to them. So you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. You're going to want to keep looking at them. So if you make them really well-rounded characters, you give them lots of good dialogue, I think that's a really nice key to success, especially in the furry space, because our whole shtick is that we're focused on anthro characters.
Yeah.
So making these characters nice and well-rounded helps. Think about your sprites as you write, or your sprites and your assets, I should really say, all your assets that you have. If you have certain pieces of music that you want to integrate, think about that as you write. Like if you have a sad song, it's like, okay, like this might be a good spot for the sad song. If you're writing a scene and characters are getting heated and they're arguing, it's like, okay, do I have angry sprites to show that they're mad and all that stuff? So you just have to keep that in mind as you write, what assets you have available to you. Also, get an editor. All right, any questions about like script? I'll take like 2 questions on script. What's up?
How is outlining a furry visual novel different from outlining any other type of story?
I wouldn't say the outlining process isn't any different, truly, because you're just kind of outlining like your setting, your characters, the general flow of the story, like that kind of thing, that translates to furry VN writing. So if you have experience writing other things outside of visual novels, that beginning process, I believe, is more the same. I've never written a traditional novel, so I don't know exactly, but the outlining process is pretty basic. Like it's not, you don't go too in depth, but I would say keep in mind some of the stuff that I discussed. Like keep in mind the assets you're gonna have access to. So for example, if you only have like 3 backgrounds, don't make a scene where outside of that background, unless you want to get a blurry photograph, right? You just gotta keep some of that stuff in mind. I'm gonna try to get to someone who I haven't spoken to. You with the sunglasses.
What if you've already started, like you were writing essentially a full-blown novel up to 110,000 words,
Okay.
and decided this would work better as a VN?
Yeah.
What would be, like, where would you start in converting?
Ooh, that's a fun idea. So I would start by, you can go back into what you've written and kind of structure it a little bit differently, because I imagine you're doing like traditional novel structure where there's paragraphs and everything. You can split that up into like your individual panels. They're gonna show up one at a time. You can start splitting that up. You can take the character dialogue and start like reformatting that to be like, the name of the character, dialogue. It's more like a line by line. It's like a screenplay for like a movie almost. That's kind of a good analogy. So.
Reverse novelization.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's move on. And again, if you have questions about script, we can talk about that later. Assets. So assets are anything that you put into your game. And also, I'm going to be using game and visual novel kind of interchangeably. So this includes your sprites, your CGs, backgrounds, music, voice acting, graphics, user interface, and more. There could be more assets that I'm not thinking of. So one thing I would recommend when it comes to the asset department, if you had one thing to be like really, really high quality, aside from the writing, the sprites, because you're going to be looking at those the most. And pretty sprites get retweets on Twitter. So make them pretty. Make them as pretty as you can, and try to make them cohesive, all that good stuff. You want to be strategic with your assets. So for example, backgrounds can be kind of pricey, and for a lot of stories, you might want a bunch of settings. You might have to narrow that down a little bit, or you can use some assets that are like free online, royalty-free stuff. To like, you can take like a photograph, make it blurry, or add like some weird effects to it in Photoshop or whatever. Also royalty-free stuff. Kevin MacLeod is your friend. Okay, he is everyone's friend. Talk to Kevin. He will give you music. He'll give you so much music for $0. Kevin MacLeod. He is a royalty-free artist. You probably have heard his stuff on TikTok and YouTube. Try to avoid those tracks in your visual novels, so it's not like, oh, am I reading a TikTok? Oh. This is the worst visual novel.
Or the best.
Who knows? And right there at the bottom, don't use AI. If you use AI, I will be upset with you. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Not only is it lazy, it is essentially, in my opinion, it's essentially theft. All right, any questions about assets? What's up?
Voice acting is on there, and that's one of those things that I didn't know existed in visual novels until like a year ago. In your experience, like, is voice acting like a thing that people often expect? Is that like a budgetary concern? Like, how would you decide whether or not you wanted it?
Oh man, I got a lot of things to say. So in chord progressions, I do have partial voice acting. And what that means is that some of the voice lines are acted, most of them are not. It is a model I have not seen other furry VNs try, and a lot of them have not tried it since I did it, which means I don't think it's a great model. The thing about voice acting is that it is very labor intensive. It involves way more than I thought it ever would, because you got to manage a bunch of different people with a bunch of different voices, a bunch of different microphones. They're gonna give you a bunch of takes. You have to pick your favorite one. You gotta edit out the background noise. There's some audio engineering bullcrap going on there. It is just, it's a lot. It's a lot. Most VN writers do not expect voice acting. If you have it, it definitely is a boon. People will be interested, but it is very challenging to implement. You have to, I would recommend either starting with a short story with voice acting, if you're gonna make one, like just quite short, I would say like maybe 5,000, 10,000 words, or have some voice acting experience somewhere else, and then get into it for VN making, because it's a lot. What's that?
Are there ever animations in visual novels?
Yeah, you can add animations with the, either it can be kind of like a traditional animation, where it's like you have like several images that all kind of flow together, or the software itself can move images on the screen. So there's many ways you can do it. What's that?
How many iterations you went for the sprite design? Because like, I know Howley went to 4 artists to draw Leo.
Right. Honestly, it's as many as you want, as many iterations as you want for the sprite design, until you like it. Until you say, that fits my vision, this is what I want in a sprite. It's got everything I'm looking for.
Or until you run out of money for it.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Yeah, that too, yeah, you're also limited by your budget. I got lucky with my sprite artist. I love my sprites a lot. So I haven't had to consider doing a second generation of sprites or anything like that.
Like, they had to like redraw Cooper too, to remember the flowers.
Yeah, I believe, yeah. Yeah, they made his snout a little different. But yeah, it just depends on your vision. You know, I'm gonna be saying that a lot because that is what's most important. It's a visual novel is your vision come to life in a software form. So it's about how much of that vision you can get out of your brain into a bunch of zeros and ones on a computer. Let's move on to the next thing. Software. Oh, that's a nice little transition. So software. So you have options and choose carefully. There's RenPy, which is what this presentation is built on, by the way. Unity, Godot, and there's a few other ones. Those are the 3 big ones I would recommend. Honestly, #1 recommendation is RenPy. The reason for that is because it is very easy to get into. You do not need to be a computer programmer. It runs on Python. You do not need to know Python. Hold up, let me show you. So I have Visual Studio Code. This is how I'm doing it. This is my presentation. And all I'm doing, so that was my character earlier. Now we're into this part of the presentation. All I'm just saying is show and hide images. It's really not that difficult. Anyone can do this. So don't be too intimidated by RenPy. RenPy is nice and easy. It'll just take some time. That's the thing. You just have to spend time with RenPy and go through the trial and error process. The more time you spend with it, the better you'll get at it. One thing about coding that's really important is that this is the marriage of all your story elements. This is where your script and your assets are gonna come together and culminate into your vision. So spend some time with coding. And one thing, ask for help. I have asked for help so many times, and I've given help a lot of times. Because I'm pretty good at RenPy. I'm not an expert by any means, but I've spent a lot of time with it, so I'm able to help newer developers. But there's just a ton of questions. There's never dumb questions when it comes to computer coding, because we're all starting from a different starting point, basically. I had the good fortune of going to engineering school, so I did some coding there, but honestly that didn't really help me too much, other than just understanding the general framework of how coding works. All right, any questions about software? What's that?
I was gonna say Stack Overflow is your friend.
Yeah. Also, if we're going to talk about technical terms, RenPy loves spaghetti. Loves spaghetti. Slurps it right up. What's up?
I wanted to ask, just for my own personal satisfaction, how many lines of code is course progression?
Do you really want to know? Do you really want to know?
I want to know how much of a task I'm trying to ease.
So this is just my first part.
Oh, joy.
I also space things out, so it just makes more sense when I have to go back and fix things. But like, yeah, you have things like these modifiers that tell like the asset how to come into frame, and then like just stuff like that. And I also comment a ton of stuff out. Yeah. So But yeah, yours doesn't have to look like this. You can spread this out amongst multiple pages. But yeah, okay, to 24,753. If you want an exact answer.
And that's just the first part?
Yeah, before the route split, yeah.
Oh.
Then when the route split happens, I have different files for those. All right, what's that guy right there?
I'm sorry, I just have to ask,
Yeah.
is that Python 2?
I have no clue. It is RenPy, that's all I know. It is RenPy. What's that?
So one thing I've noticed is that several, like digging into the code of different visual novels, is that some of them just kind of lift packages that people have prepared that create special effects in RenPy
Yes.
and allow for shortcuts. Do you have any sources that you've gone to or you would recommend for finding those packages?
I'm so happy you asked that question.
Yay.
My buddy Watson has created several plugins on itch.io. You could, I forget what his Twitter handle is, but Watson, he's, I think, a walrus, purple walrus. He has developed a lot of plugins for RenPy, lots of shaders. Don't ask me what that means, but he makes them. And he offers so much of his stuff for free. And on top of that, if you just ask him questions about RenPy, he'll help you. Like, he is one of the most helpful software people in the space. All right, I saw a question like back here on the left. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering how much RenPy costs.
$0.00. Free 99. That I should have really led with that. That's why RenPy is the best for beginners. No barrier to entry. You just get in there. What's up?
How many writers do you think are actually experienced programmers too?
Very few.
Very few.
I had the weird opposite thing where I was an experienced programmer, but I didn't write at first. Like, I did write, I did technical writing, but creative writing I was not good at first, and then I got better at it. And the same thing is true if you're a writer and you want to get into coding. You're going to suck at it at first, and that's okay. You're going to suck at it at first. Then you're going to get better, and then you're going to keep getting better. What's up?
So sorry, I have to run out, but I might have missed it. But do newer versions of RenPy like properly support animations? Because I remember playing Echo, and I think we all remember that one part where the chunter is coming, like he's suddenly animated. And I looked into the files, and it seemed very not like that was RenPy was not able to support animations, so they had to put like every single frame in there and just rapidly switch from them.
It has technology for fully animated sprites, it just no one knows how to do it.
Okay, but it is like supported now. You can like properly animate
Yeah.
it. I have I think it was like 1,000 pictures just in a folder.
Animated Dastro.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I've seen that actually. Yeah, is that in RenPy or is that something else?
RenPy.
Yeah,
It's RenPy with they moved to live 2D now.
Okay, cool. Because I knew about Live 2D. I didn't know that was like.
They were using After Effects, now they're doing live
Okay,
2D.
so that's
That's
like
cool.
fancy shit though. Yeah.
I've never used animation, so I have no idea how it works. But yeah, RenPy is a pretty flexible piece of software. It's got a lot going for it. All right, let's move on. Oh, and one more thing I want to mention before I go on. If you are more experienced in programming and you're kind of like, I don't like Python, Unity has a framework called Nanny Novel. And that's, I think, the second most popular one that visual novel developers use. It does cost money, but you get the added benefit of working in Unity.
I guess another option for Unity is an open source project called Yarn.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, I imagine there's lots of community frameworks out there where you can build your own framework if you know what you're doing. That's what Under the Bridge does. All right, marketing. Let's talk about marketing. So, I imagine if you make a visual novel, you want people to read it. So you got to tell them about it. One thing I'll say: establish a presence just on social media, Twitter, Blue Sky, Telegram, more than enough. One thing about visual novels, especially with the itch.io environment, Itch does a lot of that marketing work for you with its algorithm. It's pretty nice. So I would say if you had one platform to focus the most on, it would be itch.io. Like, make devlogs, interact with your community there, make sure you tag your project properly so that the algorithm can find it and put it in front of people. If you take a look at itch analytics for most visual novel developers, it's mostly self-referential, meaning that people who come to your page are already on itch.io. They just happen to be browsing a tag that your project's in or something like that. So I'll give you those analytics. So that's the most important place to operate. Then Twitter is also good as well. One thing I think is really important, making some good, memorable, striking graphics, getting a good graphic designer to design your graphics because your design sucked and his design was better. But yeah, good, memorable graphics go a long way when it comes to branding. Unfortunately, we have to be a little bit corporate pilled when it comes to this marketing stuff, so I'm gonna say words like branding and such. But yeah, branding's really important. You want to set up a good brand, you want memorable graphics and such. And I would recommend that you talk to your readers. You don't have to, be best friends, but at least chit chat with them, acknowledge their existence. They're gonna latch onto your project. They're gonna be more likely to latch onto your project. All right, any marketing questions? Yeah, what's up?
So when you say like memorable graphics and things, you mean like marketing images and stuff? Like what's like the set of images you need for that? What are the things that you need graphics for?
So the number one thing, you want like a logo for your project. Some kind of logo that shows like your branding. If I were to go back in the presentation, as a matter of fact, why not? Let's take a trip down memory lane. So you see like, this is actually a good example. So like you see Undefeated, good simple graphic, gets to the point, but not super interesting. Glory Hounds on the other hand, even though I've obscured it, you got this like nice heart graphic, you got these cool colors, you got these cool fonts working for you. That's like a more impactful, memorable graphic. So like you need something like that. Arches is another good example of what I think is a good graphic for a visual novel. But yeah, you want at least that. You want some kind of logo representing your work. And then one thing that's nice is that you can take a lot of the assets that you already have for your project and you can just slap the logo onto it. And then boom, you got a poster. You got something you can post on Twitter. It's phenomenal. Oh no, I skipped too far ahead. We're almost done. Hi, Daryl. No, I want the good ending. Okay, we were at software. We're moving on we were at marketing. We're moving on from marketing. Okay, we're pretty much at the end of the panel. So I got some parting advice, and then I'll be happy to take questions until, we got 20 more minutes. We got tons of time. So I'll be happy to take a ton of questions after this. So, some parting advice. Do everything you can to stay motivated. Losing motivation is the #1 killer of FVN projects. I've seen it 100 times. I think FVN fans in the room have also seen it 100 times, where a project just ends up going under and it's really upsetting. But motivation is a big thing, and you just gotta be strategic, right? If you're overworking yourself, find a way to dial that back. If you don't feel like you're working on it enough, find ways to make more time to dedicate to your project. You just have to be a little strategic with it. Another thing I would also say is that when you have a giant laundry list of things that you have to do for a project, do the things that you like first. What makes you excited? Work on those things, and then you can work on the boring stuff afterwards. So if you're like an artist, you want to draw those sprites, draw them, do it. And then worry about RenPy later, right? But just do what you can to stay motivated. Best to not bite off more than you can chew. Now, I am king hypocrite here because chord progressions the vision for it is quite grand. There are 6 routes and they're each gonna probably have 100,000 words each or whatever. I should have started with something smaller. This is me telling you, please start with something a little bit smaller first. Work your way up to a more grand project later. With Before You Depart, that was the other project I worked on. That was really nice because that was a short project I could work on with some friends. Just to get a finished product under my belt felt so good. And that also helped me out a lot. I learned a lot from doing that. But I kind of wish I did Before You Depart first, then got into chord progressions instead of the other way around. But it is what it is. So try not to bite off more you can chew. Be prepared to face harsh criticism. People in this space have opinions. They'll tell you your opinions on twitter.com. And it's a little rough. But, and this is true for pretty much any creative in the furry space. It's not just visual novels. I feel like with visual novels, people tend to be a little more critical than like of, just someone who's just illustrating on Twitter. But you gotta learn to parse the good criticism from the bad, because some people are gonna be critical of your work, but they're gonna be helpful. They're gonna, they might tear it to shreds, but there's gonna be tons of good information in there for you. And then some people are just gonna be mean. And sometimes it can be difficult to differentiate the two, because sometimes someone can be really mean, but like be very polite about it. And that's not good feedback, right? So learning to differentiate the two is a tough task, but you'll get through it. Network, talk to other creators, for the love of God. I have learned so much by talking to my peers, because all those stories I mentioned, I've talked to most of those people. If not, I'm very good friends with most of those people who make those projects. And I have helped them out, they have helped me out. So it's good to ask for help and be helpful, because they'll have your back, you can have their back, and this is, in my opinion, a communal craft. We're all working on our own projects, but we're building towards something greater, which is this furry VN environment. And then the best way to get started is to get started. People often ask me, what's the best way to get started? Just do something. Whatever makes you happy. If you want to start with like sprite design, start with sprite design. Just write down what your character's name is and what their personality is like, and maybe draw them. If you want to make an outline for your story, do that. If you want to learn how to do RenPy first, if you're like coding and you're like, I'm curious about what coding in RenPy is like, do that first. Just start with something, because it's a big undertaking. There's a massive list of stuff you have to do, so just start with something. All right, again, we are meeting up later today in the Pennsylvania room, 4 o'clock. And I'm gonna put these back up here if you wanna scan. Again, all the VNs I talked about on the left, the Telegram chat's on the right. All right, now I'm gonna take any question, we got a lot. I'm gonna start up front and work my way back. What's up?
If you have to choose 2 furry visual novels for a hypothetical comedy genre section, what would you put?
All right, okay, this is gonna be a niche one. It's called Fuzzy Donuts. This one, not a lot of people know about it, but it has some of the most stellar sitcom-esque writing I've ever seen. The joke structure is fabulous, and I am just all over that. And then probably Where the Demon Lurks. Yeah, what's up?
Who would you date in Echo?
What's that?
Who would you date in Echo?
Who would I date? Can I pick none of them? None of them.
Cop out.
Brian. All right. What's up?
2 questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
One, what was I gonna say? Do you have any recommendations for how to look for people to be involved with your team?
Yeah, so I would suggest taking a look at the furry VN space right now. See who's drawing fan art. If you're looking for an artist, or who's making music in the space, because they're going to be very motivated to jump onto a project. So I think that's a really great place to start. All right, you have a second one?
Another question. If you have a reputation, you have a brand that you are already established in as a creator, and you are branching into visual novels that might not be entirely the same kind of thing, do you have any recommendations for how to bridge the gap for that?
So if you're let's say you're a Twitter artist and you want to get into visual novels, or is that what you mean? Or
I think more like if the genre, the kind of content you put out is different than what you're trying to put out in your novel.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think of an example. Let's say
I'm a weird fetish creator.
Okay.
I want to make something more normal.
Gotcha. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, that can always be a little tough, because you have an audience who expects one kind of thing sometimes, and that can be kind of rough. That said, one thing that's really nice about FVN space is that people are very hungry for these things. If you say, hey, I'm working on this FVN project, you give them like a few pieces of art and like a logo, people are gonna just immediately just gravitate towards that. So you might have to kind of start from scratch a little bit when it comes to your audience, because if they're expecting one kind of thing and they're not gonna get that with your visual novel, you might have to kind of start from square zero, but a lot of us did start from square zero and built up an audience that way. So, yeah, so it helps, but yeah, it could be a little rough. All right, all the way on the right there with the yellow lanyard. Yellow.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
So, I mean, obviously, like, it's easy to find, like, a visual novel that has branding, right? Like, we can go to that space and be like, oh, cool. But, like, when you are looking for people, say, like, maybe an editor, where would you go look? Because, you know, I've had trouble finding places without, like, just literally going up to people and being like, I do editing. Like, is that the way to do it? Or is there a repository somewhere? Like, where do you go look?
Yep. I'll give you a very specific suggestion. On Discord, there is a FVN server if you're not in it. Furry visual novels run by my good buddy Akiba. There are spaces there where you can say that you're looking for work. So you can just kind of put yourself out there. And also I'd say just start integrating yourself in the community. Just start talking to creators or people who are potentially creating. Because like, if you start socializing in our space, you might meet some people who are not creators, but they will eventually be creators. If you're buddies with them, then you can bring that up, like, hey, I want to edit for you, like stuff like that. So yeah, just like integrating yourself in the social space helps. All right, more questions in the pink shirt. Yeah.
So, do you know anything about implementing accessibility features in visual novels, particularly text-to-speech or image descriptions?
I'm glad you asked that. So, one thing that's cool about RenPy is that it does a lot of that work for you. Shift A. So this is the accessibility menu that's built into RenPy, and it's in everything you want. So you can change the font. I'll change it to Open Dyslexic. I can make the text a little bit bigger. You could do self-voicing. So one thing that's really nice is that a lot of this is already in there for you. I don't know about other frameworks, but RenPy at least, RenPy at least has a lot of that going for you. If you want more features, you might have to get creative with how you program it, but at least you have a good starting point. Right, what's up?
So if you've started a project, you know where you wanted to get to, the ending.
Yeah.
But you're having difficulty in that middle.
Okay.
I don't know, any advice you have for trying to figure out how to continue the story?
Okay, so like from a writing perspective, like you have the beginning, you have the ending kind of planned out.
You have an idea for the ending,
But you want that
started
middle.
working, but now you're hit a stump.
Yeah, you need the metal, yeah. I'm not the best person to ask because I think I'm okay at writing, I'm not the best, but how I generally parse through that kind of stuff when I have, because I think most writers have been in that situation where you have a beginning, you have an ending thought out. I kind of think about the ways that the story could logically unfold, just sort of like, okay, what would this character do in this situation, right? Like, what would be the most sensible thing?
Role play your characters
yeah.
through it, figure out.
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it. Yeah, like role playing as your characters, so that way you can kind of bridge that gap there. Even if it might only create like one node in that bridge, I guess if I'm trying to make some kind of analogy, that still helps. Because then you can, okay, so, in order from get to A to F, D has to happen, but I need to figure out what's going to be for B, C, D, but, you could sort of bridge the gap in between those and kind of work that way. What's up, Racky?
To add to that, that's where an outline really comes in helpful, because that way you can look at all your points that you need to get to quickly in a quick visual manner, and then from there you can figure out like, oh, I'm missing something here. I'm missing something in this section, and I need to change it and fix it.
Yeah. Ask the Writing 101 guy. Whoever's hosting Writing 101, they'll be able to help you out a little bit more. Okay, I want to take some questions from the back. You.
Do you have any recommendations for the women enjoyers?
the women enjoyers.
I
So
just noticed a general trend, and I'm